Hey everyone, and welcome to Generative Now. I am Michael Mignano, and I'm a partner at Lightspeed. The entertainment industry has a billion-dollar question. What makes a story a blockbuster? That's the big question that Rohan Nayak is tackling as the CEO and co-founder of Pocket FM, the global audio fiction powerhouse from Bangalore, India. Pocket FM is using AI to predict blockbusters, localize stories, and act as a co-pilot for writers. They have 50,000 shows produced with AI and more than 100 billion minutes being streamed to listeners each month. Pocket FM is positioning themselves to 10x the growth on even more formats like webcomics and novels. This was a fascinating conversation that really showcases how AI can be leveraged to turbocharge content platforms, and I think you'll enjoy it. So check out this conversation with Rohan Nayak, co-founder and CEO of Pocket FM. Hey, Rohan.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
It's going well.
Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. I think we're on like opposite ends of the world right now. So great to see you. What time is it there in Bangalore?
It's 8:30 p.m.
Okay, doing this in the morning for me.
Yeah, but I work across 2 time zones, as you know. So it's not too late for me.
Yeah. So wait, so you have teams. We were talking a little bit about this before we hit the record button. So you obviously have teams in Bangalore and then also in LA. Is that right?
Yeah, LA and Bangalore. So I keep shuttling between the two. Not a great commute, but
How long's the commute?
24 hours. 24. It's just like a full day. Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to figure out what to do on the plane, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, I guess you sleep for part of it.
What I've realized is that sort of time when you're not connected to the internet, I sort of do a lot of my creative thinking, and I've sort of realized those flights help me a bit to zoom out. Because when you're plugged in, you just messages, Slack, emails. But when you're on the flight, there are no messages, so you can just zoom out, think about things in a more creative way. It's a fun time for me nowadays.
Yeah, it's good for like doing your deep strategy work, probably.
For sure.
Well, so obviously, Pocket FM being a Lightspeed portfolio company, I'm super familiar with the business, and it's been fascinating to watch. Congrats on all the progress. But, for listeners and viewers just tuning in who haven't heard of Pocket FM, I think it'd be great to start with the story. Like, give us your background and maybe lead into how and why you started Pocket FM and what you guys are doing today.
Sure, Mike. So I've been sort of building content platforms for the last 10, 15 years. You could say I'm just obsessed with it. I consume all forms of entertainment and content, from manga, anime, of course, movies and novels. So sort of like I've been building content platforms for a very long period of time, and I just wanted to build something here. And the philosophy for me has been that can I build a new platform which brings new artists to life? Because every content platform which gets developed does bring new creators to life in a way. And that has been sort of my sort of personal vision, so to say. I was working in a startup and I was commuting 3 hours to work. And at that point of time, I used to think, what am I doing with my life? It's 3 hours of 3 hours every day. But it turns out it did have some value. And so I was consistently thinking, what can I do in content? What more can be done? And here I was, 3-hour commute, and I'm used to long commutes, as you know, right? And I realized I was getting bored a lot, because 3 hours a day and 15 hours a week. I tried listening to a lot of audiobooks, podcasts, video content, but it was I couldn't consume video content, but it was harder, of course, while commuting. And audiobooks and podcasts were good when I wanted to learn something new or I wanted to find out about some topic. But being an entertainment sort of enthusiast, I wanted entertainment and audio. So, and I was getting bored, and I tried everything out. I just couldn't find anything. And I think then that's when it struck me. The mental model I had for video entertainment was there's a spectrum of entertainment products. There's long form entertainment, which is your video streaming, Netflix, Disney. And then you have short form sort of entertainment, which is, of course, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. And then in between, you have Twitch, you have YouTube. There's a spectrum of entertainment, right? But you think about this spectrum of short form to long form in audio, nothing really exists, right?
Hmm.
Music is a different form of entertainment. Then there's podcasts and audiobooks, which are not necessarily entertaining. It's more infotainment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Information, right? And it just, and I, from a first principle thinking point of view, I just couldn't understand why something, let's say like a Netflix for audio or TikTok for audio, or on both opposite ends of the spectrum doesn't exist. And as a user, I wanted, audio entertainment. And, it is still strange, till date, that why something like this never existed in the first place. But so that built conviction, and that, if I as a user is facing such a problem, maybe something like this could exist. And being passionate about stories and entertainment, I sort of, took a plunge there. Let's figure this out. I have no idea what this is going to be. It's a sort of a blank. I have no idea. It's a blank canvas, literally, right? Let's just figure this out. So that's how we started Pocket.
And did you feel like that need was not being met by, say, more narrative form podcasts? Obviously, in the podcast catalog on Spotify and YouTube and Apple, there are plenty of, fiction or nonfiction, more like narrative based podcasts. Was that not meeting the need for you?
Yeah, I mean, I tried a few. So I feel that narrative podcasts are still a very small subset of the entire podcast world. I mean, if you unbundle podcasts, right, fiction and entertainment is not a big sort of category. I mean, if you look at the top 100 podcasts in the US, you would find a few, but it's still dominated by information-led podcasts. And I believe that, entertainment and audio needed a different approach, which is a bit different from like how a typical podcast sort of works out, how it's written, how it's structured. And you need a different platform of thought, because entertainment as a whole is huge. It's not a subset of podcasts, right? So that's what the thought process here was.
So you needed a different content approach. You also just mentioned you needed a different platform. Was that because you felt like there were, maybe at the time, or maybe you eventually, learned this in doing it, but did you feel that there was a product gap that was missing as well? Like, oh, it's not enough to just listen to this audio, close my phone, put it away in my pocket, that you actually there needed to be product differentiation. Did you feel like that was a gap also?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, over time, what I've realized is that building an audio platform is very hard. You have to solve some very fundamental problems, like, from content discovery, which is harder in audio than video. Right. I mean, in audio, in background, you're not exploring the app.
Because you're not looking at the screen. You're not foregrounding the experience.
Exactly. The foreground experience is not there. So how do you build the discovery? And that has been a challenge for any audio format, even be it music. And so it needed a different discovery mechanism, which is different from, let's say, how podcasts are discovered today. And then monetization, right? I mean, I believe that we have cracked monetization in audio. And specifically in audio entertainment, you needed a different approach to monetization, which was just different from how podcasts were monetized.
That totally makes sense why you would need product to solve content discovery. As you know, I also started an audio company, and content discovery was a never-ending challenge. And fortunately, after we sold to Spotify, we were able to inherit a lot of their content discovery tools. But massive ML challenge. What about on the content side? What was it about the content that you felt needed to evolve beyond the traditional sort of like narrative podcast structure?
Sure. So, when we started building an audio entertainment platform, we realized we had to find a format. I mean, any new entertainment category needs a new format. For instance, for TikTok, it was like 9:16 short vertical videos. For Instagram, it was square photos, and so on. And, it took us 2 years. Of course, Lightspeed backed us, right at the beginning. And we used to do we went through like 10 plus pivots, where the idea was, what's the right format for audio entertainment? And over time, we realized that audio is a long form entertainment product. It's very hard to make it short form. Like you won't listen to an audio for 15 seconds, right? I mean, because your use cases are longer, and you would prefer a long form entertainment use case. And then we also realized users wanted bite-sized episodes, in the sense that, it's sort of like 10 minutes episode instead of like a 1 hour episode for fiction, because you can just consume it whenever you want, instead of like a 1 hour sort of episode length. That was second. And third, we wanted long form content. Think of it like TV shows and audio. It's voice acting, it's sound effects, it's music. So you close your eyes, you can cinematic experience of sort. And when we call it audio series, so sort of TV shows and audio, it's 10-minute episodes, bite-sized content, but long form. These are like 500 episodes, 1,000 episodes.
Oh, that's what you mean by long form, is the volume of episodes.
Yeah, it's sort of like 10 seasons worth of, like, think of it like a TV show having 10 seasons. It's almost like 100 hours worth of content. But with one interesting, tweak, we wanted the creators to upload one episode every day. And that was a very interesting, I would say, modification. Instead of like a weekly, like say you can have one episode a week, but if you upload one episode every day, it builds a habit, right? You sort of like, you listen to it, it becomes part of your life, and you listen to that show every day. So that really improves retention and frequency of usage. So that was a very important tweak.
Maybe going back a little bit. So now I understand the content differences you felt were necessary, as well as the product differences. How did you go about doing this? Had you ever started a company before? Was this your first time being a CEO of a company? And how do you go from sitting on this commute for 3 hours every day, thinking about this idea, to jumping ahead and diving right in and building a company?
I've worked in different startups, but I never started any. I wanted to for a very long period of time. And it's sort of like those things, you're just waiting for an opportunity that you find something where you will build a deep conviction, and you just start, and you just take the plunge. So for me, it was, I was very clear I wanted to start up, and I found something which I'm really deeply passionate about. I mean, I didn't want to start up in anything except content. I was very clear about that. I used to think maybe I should do that. I mean, some other sort of ideas which come in, but I've sort of realized that over time, you tend to do, if you do the things you really love, it just, you get the courage to start up, and you go deeper, and then you just, stick around for a much longer period of time, trying to figure out what would work if you really love it. So for me, it was like, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm okay doing this for the rest of my life. So I just took the plunge, and I'll figure it on the way. I mean, I have no idea what to do. It's not like, I have some platform to look forward to. Hey, maybe I can, get some learning from what others have done. There was literally nothing at this point, but I loved it. So I thought we should just, I should just take the plunge.
And how did you go from inception to where you are now today? I mean, Pocket FM, people may not realize, is a massive, massive platform with, I don't know what you've revealed publicly in terms of revenue or, hours of content or creators or active users. But I mean, we're talking really, really big numbers. I mean, Pocket FM is a powerhouse. So what's the short story of how you went from, I'm jumping in to where you are today?
It's just been a series of pivots and experiments. I think for us, we are very clear that all of us, we came from product and engineering backgrounds, right? So we were like, hey, I'm not a media person, right? So we realized we can always, if we marry art and science, sort of think of it like the way that how do you make your content decisions using data and technology and now AI to accelerate your growth, to just get better content, to produce better content for listeners. Every year has been sort of a very interesting journey for us. I mean, we started in September 2018. 2021 is when we really figured out audio series. It took us like a good 2 years. When we launched audio series on the platform, this new category of audio entertainment, our engagement time shot up to 120 minutes per user per day. It's 2 hours of binge listening. And interestingly, what we realized is that users were consuming us throughout the day. Audio series is the only entertainment format which can be consumed 24/7, right? I mean, we are seeing engagement when you wake up, when you commute to work, sometimes during your sort of work hours, when you're free for some time, you commute back from work, and then before sleeping, when you don't want to look at a screen, right? I mean, when you think about video entertainment, you have to carve out some time to consume, to watch a movie or to watch a show. You have to have a couple of hours, right? But in audio, you just don't. You can to it whenever you want, and it's entertaining. It's a content which you can consume whenever you want. It's not information which sometimes you just get an overload of, right? It doesn't require a lot of cognitive sort of thinking to consume very lightweight content, if that makes sense.
What about video, though? How do you feel about video? I mean, obviously, we've seen Spotify try to aggressively drive adoption of some of their new video products. YouTube is now the biggest podcasting platform in the world, and obviously, it's all video. Is like, how do you think about the opportunity of video for Pocket FM, or are you so focused on audio you feel like that's always going to be the predominant format?
Yeah, we focused on audio. I believe it's a huge category and it has its own use case, which doesn't compete with video. And I still feel audio as a category can have a lot more adoption if it has different content categories, right? I mean, even in a pocket for audio fiction, like essentially audio series, serialized fiction content, we're just getting started. And I think, we're at right now more than 20 million monthly active users. We went from zero to $250 million in revenue in just 2 years since we have started monetization. And last year we saw over 100 billion minutes being streamed on Pocket. And then this is still very early, Mike. I mean, we're just getting started. We still have a very sort of, not a large catalog of content. And because audio series has a chicken and egg problem, right? It's not like content for us is just out there somewhere and you can just license it and put it on your platform. You have to figure it out with your creators and how can we get high quality audio content. Users don't care if it's a new category or not. They just want high quality content in each and every subgenre. So I think we're just getting started, but I think we are laser focused on audio, but we of course want to expand to categories where we believe that our IPs that we're creating using audio has potential. Like for instance, at a very fundamental level, if you abstract the audio format, we're essentially in the business of finding unique stories, right? I mean, because that's what fiction is. I mean, you have to find these unique, unheard stories and make it available to your listeners. Once we have a great IP or a great story, you would not want to stop that just in audio form. You want to adapt that to multiple formats. So we would want to expand formats. But of course, from a point of view of focus, it's audio.
It makes a ton of sense. Okay, so now we've laid the groundwork on what Pocket FM is, and thanks for sharing those numbers. I mean, this is like the listeners can hear now. Like this is some real scale. Let's talk about AI. Right, this is an AI podcast, and as I've heard from you in the past, Pocket FM is leveraging AI in some pretty profound ways, and so. Why don't we get into that? Like maybe starting with content creation. How is Pocket FM leveraging AI for content creation?
Sure. So I think if we take a step back, right? So we've believed that I think as a philosophy, we believe that a generative AI is going to shift the balance of power more towards creators than someone in the middle. And what I mean by that is it's easier. It's becoming easier for creators to produce high quality content using AI on their own. And for us, as we just spoke about in the beginning, that for us, it's been very clear that how do you use technology to solve content problems? As a company, we hate gatekeepers. Yeah, right? We don't want someone to decide if a show is good or not. We want users to decide that. So, right. And as a result, we've always believed then how can we create a platform where anyone can produce a high quality audio show? So that has been sort of something we've been working on for a very, very long period of time, but it was just hard without AI, right? And so the first step that we took that how can we help our writers produce high quality audio content? I mean, there are a lot of writers who want to, who have great stories, but how will they, find a voice artist, edit the audio file, and upload it on Pocket FM? We always used to have an option where you can upload an audio show on the platform, but it didn't have traction because it was hard to do.
Any user could upload.
Anyone. But it didn't have great traction because again, if I'm a writer, I still have to figure out a voice artist and edit the audio file, add background music, and so on. But then with AI, finally, it was possible to if you have a great story, you can adapt that. You can adapt that to an audio form using AI voice. You can edit the background music on the app itself. And we worked with 11 labs, for this. But we launched this product in March 2024 last year, when anyone on the app now does see that upload option, but then you can now start writing on the app and on the web app. And once the episode is sort of, complete, you get an option to select an AI voice. And these are really high quality, like, we've worked with the 11 labs on this in a lot more detail, in a lot more detail, very high quality content. And you just click a button. The click of a button, an audio show is live.
That's unbelievable. Anyone can do this now.
Anyone can do this. And till date, we launched this in just been over a year. We have seen 50,000 AI shows being created. Just for context, before this, we were primarily a PGC platform, a professional generated content platform with just 200 shows.
Wow.
Now, this is 50,000. And the feedback that we're getting. So it was clear that a product market fit was great from a writer standpoint. But what about a user? What about the engagement? AI generated content, right, is already contributing to almost like $6 million in revenue. But that does seem small as compared to $200 million in revenue, $250 million revenue, but that's growing 40% month on month.
Wow.
And this would not have been possible without AI, right? It just is very clear.
So these 50,000 shows, like, talk us through the creation process. Like, where are humans doing the bulk of the heavy lifting, and where is the AI doing the bulk of the heavy lifting? I'm guessing on things like, obviously, like you said, the background music, the voices through 11 labs. But what about like the actual writing process? Like, are humans doing the full writing process themselves? Are they getting leverage from AI to like help with ideas? Like, talk us through that.
Yeah. So the first version of the product just had voice and sort of, editing capabilities. And then now the second version, which we have been working on, is what we're now developing a co-pilot for writers. Now, one insight here is that most of our top UGC writers who are using AI are actually our power listeners and first-time writers. And there's a very interesting insight here, right? As it's a new category of content creation, someone who has never consumed this category logically can't be a great writer, because you still need to understand how it is to write for audio, how it is to, if you haven't consumed a high quality audio show, which is, let's say, produced by a human, like how would you as a writer know what to write? But what we realized is that when we launched this AI voice product, our content creation exploded. But then there were challenges where writers were like, I have a great story, but I don't know how to, the nuts and bolts of writing, right? How do you structure an episode? How do you start an episode? It has to be engaging. When the episode ends, it has to end with a cliffhanger. How do you write great cliffhangers, right? And secondly, how do you design story arcs? Like, if you imagine like a 500 episode show, how do you design story arcs? How do you take user feedback and change your content? So we realized, hey, there has to be a co-pilot because of two reasons. One, we have episode by episode retention data for a lot of these shows. So we know what works and what doesn't work in terms of, how do you start an episode? How long should be a story arc be? These are like all playbooks that we have developed internally. And secondly, we realize we have ton of data. We will have ton of data when, let's say, a writer is writing on the platform and an AI suggests an output, right? And you like it. And that'll be a feedback loop for the model, right? So any edits would be a feedback loop for the model to improve it. So we have been working this for, right? So imagine like in Chat GPT, if you don't like the output, you say, maybe just change it a little bit, right? That acts as a feedback for Chat GPT.
Are these your own models that you're training?
We're calling it Atlas, our co-pilot.
Okay.
We have fine-tuned open source models, but I think we had to solve some really hard problems. I think the first problem was you can't hallucinate in fiction writing. You can't change the relationship between two characters at some point in the future, right? You just can't do it. You have to maintain context. And even though Llama 4 and all these models have 10 million tokens, but the context is such a big problem.
Yeah.
We had to solve it. We had to build sort of a layer on top of these open source models where we had to, let's say you are the writer writing a story. We save all the relationship between entities and characters in a database, which the model then queries to make sure the model is in the right direction. That's just one. And then secondly, we're also now built agentic systems. Think of it like this, right? There's an output that AI is generating, and then there are agents which detect, hey, is the cliffhanger good enough? If it's not, here are 5 options. Maybe, you should think of a cliffhanger like this. Or is the pacing slow? Because everyone wants fast-paced content nowadays. No one wants a drag. Maybe, you can think of this paragraph that you just wrote, condense it into one line. Don't write a full paragraph of content. Something like this. There are different agentic system, one on pacing, one on cliffhanger, one on episode opening. Because if the opening is boring, users will drop off. So think of it like it's sort of you have relationship between entities which solves hallucination problem, and you have agentic systems for different parts of the different sort of components of the story. In fact, the biggest one sometimes, and if you use GPT or any of these platforms, the language is not simple. That's not how people talk, right? So
yeah,
we have now created a simplicity agentic model just to make sure the language is simple enough for audio listeners. So I think so we want to be one of the leading models for story writing for Copilot, because I believe that story is sort of the core of entertainment, right? Everything is a wrapper on top of that, if that makes sense. If you have a great story, audio, comics, novels, audio, comics, video, it's all a wrapper or a different form factor of a core story, right? So I think if we solve this really well, that we can enable writers from anywhere in the world to write great stories and then put that in audio, and and just with a button. And maybe at some point we're also working on, if you have a great story, you can convert that to a comic with the click of a button, right?
Yeah, so to like spin out additional formats from your creativity and your IP.
What our aim is to solve the story generation piece really well.
Right.
Once that is done, voice is still, I think we're very close to solving the voice problem. As it's working doing really well. If you're a writer, you get into this Pocket ecosystem, you write a great show. We'll help you in writing a great show. That the tool will help you in writing a great show. And I would say there's an interesting insight I want to share on that, right? We have over 250,000 writers in our sort of community. But if you think about it, every writer has a great story, but they do need some bit of coaching sometimes on how to write better. But you can't have 250K coaches, right? It's not scalable. It doesn't make sense. But now think of it like this. There's an AI editor of thought, which is telling you, hey, here are a few thoughts. And this editor has real-time data of retention, of all the edits that writers have done over the past, let's say a year as of now. And then over time, it's just going to get better and better. It's sort of like having an editor, the best at person editor, right?
Yeah. Really, really fascinating. I actually I can't think of any other platform where the platform where all the demand occurs also has a creative tool that's sort of this fundamentally tied to AI, and where AI gives somebody like this much leverage, whereas like they couldn't do it before. They couldn't write sort of these series, and now they can. That's really fascinating. I remember you were also telling me about a way that you leverage AI. I don't know if you're still doing it, where you're effectively leveraging it to help you identify blockbusters. So quickly spinning up content ideas, using AI, then quickly testing them with AI. And then where you see real demand, you invest heavily in those ideas and those stories. Is that something that you're doing?
Yeah. So I think, the story generation sort of, technology that we're building with AI has multiple use cases. One is, of course, a Copilot for writers. The second use case, which we haven't talked about, is localization of a story into multiple languages.
Oh,
we can
wow.
touch upon that. And the third one that you're referring is, let's say for original ideas, right? So we used to do a lot of PGC. We still do PGC content, which is our original sort of content creation. And the challenge in PGC was always that how do you get a blockbuster, right? That's the sort of like the $1 billion question in entertainment. You have to predict blockbusters, launch blockbusters every month, every quarter. And for us, the challenge used to be that you can do a lot of pilots. So we have created this AI blockbuster engine. So think of it like this: that what constitutes a blockbuster? If you fundamentally break it down into sort of the components, right? So if you do first principles sort of analysis, you would see a blockbuster show which has a lot of appeal, which a lot of people like. It's it's a large TAM, like large addressable market, and it also has users are willing to pay for it in our sort of world. It is, a lot of users like it, they're willing to pay for it. But how do you find such shows? So one way for us to do that was launch a lot of pilots, launch the pilot on social media. Social media is a very great way to actually to get an estimate of, do users even like it?
Yeah, get feedback quickly.
And we started monitoring metrics like completion rates, CTRs, engagement rates.
Where? Like on TikTok or like YouTube?
On YouTube, on TikTok, on
Okay.
Meta, right? So you launch it on all these platforms and get sort of feedback to who the audience could be. And we started seeing some shows, like some concepts, when you write these pilots or make these pilots, do it really well. Like, it's sort of like an order of magnitude better than the rest of the pilots, right? And then you also launch these pilots in app, right? Just on app, and also check the conversion rates, like what's your pair conversion, which means are users willing to pay for it? And then you combine these sort of metrics, right? Think of it like a show. There's a high sort of click-through rate and high conversion. And we started seeing, patterns where shows which had high CTRs and high sort of conversion do really well. And some of these shows like Saving Nora, My Empire System have made more than $40 million in revenue now.
Oh my God.
Just each, right? And now the question for us is, how do we do these pilots faster, right? And also, can you know the retention of a show even before launching? I mean, when we used to do this with humans, this pilot testing, we used to only sort of, let's say, do a pilot of 50 episodes, right? But the show could be great till 50 episodes and then, not, and just, tank after that. And this was a genuine problem, to be honest, right? We started launching a few shows which just didn't do well because didn't have great retention. So we said to ourselves, how can we solve this? Can an AI create a pilot of 500 episodes, right? With AI, again, these are use case of sort of the co-pilot we have created, right? You create a 500 episode show. Again, do the same things, launch it on social media, launch it on app, but this time, you're testing not just the TAM of the show, the appeal of the show, the conversion of the show, and the retention of the show. And you can do this in a day instead of like a couple of months.
What's really interesting about this is obviously you can get to an answer really quickly on whether or not a piece of IP is something worth investing in. But I have to imagine you can do other types of analysis as well, like, I don't know, like A/B testing with different narrative approaches, or, isolating certain characters or things like. What about that? I mean, imagine with AI, you can do all sorts of like very micro tests on the content. Is that something you're exploring?
Yeah. So we've started again this with PGC first, and then we're going to make it open to writers.
Okay.
At any point, we have almost like for our top shows, like 5 parallel versions running
Of the content.
Of the content. So like different opening, different, in some cases, different voice. So like 5-6 different versions of a show. And then you pick the winning version. And of course, it's sort of like A/B testing in content.
Yeah. Wow. Does it happen automatically?
No, I mean, as of now, initially we used the writers, the PGC sort of writers used to do it. Now with AI, it's possible to change. I think one thing which is very critical for a new show is the opening, is the first 1 hour, the first 5 minutes, the first 1 minute, right? And this is where you can actually do a lot of A/B testing to figure out what's the right start to the show. Because in today's world, if your opening or the first 1 hour is boring, it doesn't matter if the story is good after that. It just
Yeah.
doesn't matter, right? So we do a lot of A/B testing, especially in the opening. Now, what we're now trying to do is with our UGC writers, we're going to give them the same functionality that, here is suggested 5, 6 variations. Just, again, select which one you want to A/B test with. So the way all of these work, we first do it on our own for internal sort of use case with our own writers, our PGC writers. And then once it's fine tuned, it's good enough to roll it out. We roll it out to our UGC community.
Fascinating. What do you deliver back to the creator? Like, does the creator need to be able to like understand how to analyze data and like run these A/B tests, or is it really just like sort of doing it for them and kind of like dumbing it down so that anyone could leverage A/B testing and multivariate testing?
It's dumbing it down, right? I believe that how do you make it super easy for writers? One interesting sort of feature that we're just launching in the next couple of months is a chat. So instead of you seeing so many different interfaces and data and so on, the idea is you can just ask a bot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
The bot knows the retention data, that knows what your problems could be. So it could be as simple as my retention fell this episode. What could be the potential reasons? Again, this is an extension of the story generation sort of technology, because now that the AI understands the story really well, understands what could be the potential reasons why the show had a retention drop this episode. It could be because, it could be as subtle reason as this episode, you moved the plot and focused more on the secondary character and the users just didn't like it. It could be as subtle as that. Maybe just, make sure going to the next episode, you don't do that. Right. So the chat would be a great interface for writers.
I'm thinking back to what you talked about with how it's even in writing, it's really hard to maintain consistency, maintain, the right context around characters, their relationships. I have to imagine that you have similar challenges, but a whole different set of them when it comes to comics and webtoons. Like, how do you make sure that these things maintain style consistency and, draw the characters in the same way? I mean, this is a really hard thing in AI for all these image and video models. So curious how you deal with that.
Sure. So, I think when we thought of launching a webtoon platform, and the reason was very clear that I believe that while building Pocket FM, we have built I think we've created a new way to build an entertainment business, in the sense that how do you use AI to find out to produce and discover great shows, to market them, and how do you monetize them? These are three different. The way we built out these three verticals are very different from, let's say, how an entertainment business is built today. And we thought to ourselves that can we sort of export these playbooks, this content, AI-driven content playbooks, to another format. And the first one that came to our mind was comics, because I've been a very passionate manga consumer, right? I've been consuming that for the last 10, 15 years. And the most frustrating problem is that you get one episode a week, and that episode just takes 3 minutes to read. I'm waiting a week for 3 minutes. That's just frustrating. And the step that takes the most amount of time is the coloring, the illustration, which you mentioned, to making sure there's consistency in style, face, right? But we thought to ourselves, hey, if I can solve this particular step with AI, everything else remains the same. You have to still write the content. You have to letter the speech bubbles and so on and so forth. You can sort of shorten that time. So we started building Blaze with a thought that can we sort of train characters? And we built it on diffusion models, and can you train certain characters using some synthetic data, using some human sketches in the beginning, to make sure that you train the models on, let's say a story has 20 characters, right? I mean, we used to do it on our own. Now we're trying to sort of making it, we still do it on our own, but we'll open it up to the world in a few quarters where anyone can do it. So you can essentially train characters the way you want the character to look. So you train the character so that you maintain this face consistency. You train it on we developed methodologies on how do you make sure what should be in your training data for face consistency, for style consistency, for even background consistency, right? And sometimes what happens, the background changes. Could be the same background, but a little bit different. So how do you train these things so that when you then try to create a comic, it just becomes that you just need to draw a rough out. The way Blaze works is you as a visual sort of as an artist, just draw a rough sketch of what you want the panel to be. For instance, let's say you want, someone sitting on a bench, you'll just, draw a very rough outline, select the character, which has already been trained, and write a prompt. I want this sort of a background this sort of a background, let's say, and then you click a button, right? So what will happen is, as you've done a rough outline, you've mentioned the expressions, but it's a very rough sketch. It's not hard to do, right? A sort of artist can do it in a very short amount of time. And then what the model will do is it'll sort of use that outline and do image to image instead of text to image, right? They'll do image to image. And then for the background, it'll do text to image, right? So sort of combine image to image and text to image and generate a panel for you.
Yeah, got it. So you're using image to image to solve the consistency problem.
Yeah. See, but the rough sketch is a very rough sketch. It's not like you have to draw something very detailed. So by the way, with this, artists have gone to, from 1 episode a week, the productivity is 3 episodes a day.
Oh my goodness.
20x productivity. And because of which, what we're seeing in Pocket Tunes when we launched, we're launching some of these audio IPs into comics, binge reading is happening in comics where our users are actually the average engagement time has gone above 100 minutes. Very similar to audio. Because of the velocity of content, right? It's like binge reading can finally happen in comics, which never used to happen.
Right. So, earlier in the conversation, we talked about how AI has been really helpful in solving content creation and removing bottlenecks. And you went from, hundreds of storytellers to, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. Seems like then you'd have a different challenge, which would be you'd have so much content, you might not know what to do with it. Or more specifically, like maybe, back to some of the things we talked about earlier in the discussion. Now you have a new type of discovery problem, right? How do you solve that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest problem that, we have right now. One of the hardest problems we have right now. So we have built a propagation algorithm right now where, if a new piece of content comes in, first you let the AI sort of try to first moderate it in a way to make sure it doesn't have plagiarism and a few other checks. And then you let the AI also evaluate the content a little bit. Right. And I think with that, and as I said, sort of with this, the entire stack of story generation, this will get better and it's already getting better. So you evaluate the content a little bit and then you propagate it to a few hundred users. And you check the data of these 100 users. How did this particular show perform? Did it have good retention? Did it have good conversion? If it's good, you propagate to 1,000 users and then 10,000 and then a lot more users, right? So it's sort of like a propagation algorithm. Now, the tricky part here is that, let's say, what's your first 100 users that you show this, piece of content to, which may or may not be good, right? So over time, the longer term solution here is the evaluation piece. Can we get better at evaluating the content in the first place? So that because we still like a user first product, right? We believe that we want to be more user obsessed. If I have to choose between that, I will choose users and their experience over propagating a sort of a bad piece of content to them. So the longer term solution has to be an AI led evaluation.
So first, like basically what you're saying is before you even think about recommendations, discovery, personalization. First, it's like, hey, let's look at the content. Let's evaluate it. Like, let's actually make sure that it meets some quality threshold, that it's not infringing, that it's, safe. That's like the first step. But what about the second step? And then like matching it with the right user?
Yeah. I mean, for us, that has been in the works for some period of time. We do collaborative. Of course, the collaborative filtering works really well. And we've also, that's essentially basically you're trying to figure out, users tend to have a few genres they like about a lot more. right? And then what you also do is, let's say there's a show. Usually we tag these shows with multiple labels. So think of it like one show would have close to like 100 tags. And that tag could be, for instance, in science fiction, it could be interplanetary, right? That's a tag, right? And then imagine there are like multiple of these tags that a show is attributed to. So over time, what we get to know from a user sort of consumption pattern is that what labels or what tags are the users liking more of. And then if a new show comes in, which is, hitting some of these sort of tags, we recommend that show to that particular user.
Got it. Makes sense. Rohan, it seems like you've built some incredible tools for content creation, like explosion of content creation now across multiple formats, audio, webtoons. You've got the technology to distribute, you've got your own platform, and you've got the AI and machine learning technology to distribute this and make sure not only it's reaching the right people, but it's sending feedback back to the creators to optimize around things like retention. Seems to me that like Pocket FM is sort of perfectly positioned to now go and do this for a bunch of different content formats. How do you think about that? Is the future of the platform much more formats? How do you go? I mean, you're already obviously performing phenomenally well. Like, how do you go from where you are today and, 10x the growth or 100x the growth?
Sure. So I still believe, though, Pocket FM and Pocket Tunes and Pocket Novels, which is the third platform, will have a lot of potential in it. We're just scratching the surface for these categories, and AI is just going to help us accelerate growth in these categories. One thing we didn't cover is that because of the fact that now we can localize and adapt one story into multiple languages almost instantaneously, that opens up a lot of growth avenues. So think of it like this: there are 83 languages which have more than 10 million speakers. But content is not produced in 83 languages. It's produced in like a few languages and then dubbed in other languages, which is not the ideal experience for anyone.
Right.
Now you can, be it audio, webtoons, you can actually localize. Like, let's say, we have now a bunch of shows which were which were produced for the US, now doing really well in Germany, in France, right, in Mexico. And just think of from a point of view, a longer term point of view, we will have content in 83 languages or more, right? And that can happen with not much effort, right? If you have a great show, how do you localize the show into multiple languages? So just localizing and adapting into different cultures, adapting to different formats. These are huge growth opportunities for us in terms of audio, webtoons, and novels. Now, when it comes to different formats, I still believe that as AI evolves, and if we own the IP and we are allowing creators to produce much better stories, we are open to opening up new formats. But I think these three itself can scale up 10x from here. And I think the language, just localizing to multiple languages is a big piece of that growth journey.
Awesome. Rohan, for anyone who's just checking out Pocket FM for the first time, what are some shows that you recommend people tune into first?
The first is My Vampire System, and the second is Lord of Mysteries. I'm a huge fantasy and a science fiction sort of fan, but do check out My Vampire System, Lord of Mysteries, and Saving Nora.
Okay. All right. We'll check them out. Rohan, this has been fascinating. I think the way that you're leveraging AI to scale up content platforms and discovery is frankly unlike anything we've seen on other content platforms thus far. So really, really cool to see you all leading the charge with AI. So thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to do this again.
Thank you, Mike. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for listening to Generative Now. If you liked this episode, please rate and review the show. And of course, subscribe. It really does help. And if you want to learn more, follow Lightspeed at LightspeedVP on X, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Generative Now is produced by Lightspeed in partnership with Pod People. I am Michael Mignano, and we will be back next week. See you then.